All right, so for this video, I'm going to go over some of the questions that were given to you today in your Jeopardy review, and I have the ones circled here. So if you want to go over any of these questions, just fast forward to these problems, and then you could go over those ones in particular. If you need to go through some of the other questions, all these questions kind of cover all the different things that are on there. So maybe you can watch the questions I do go over, and then from there you can apply it to the numbers of the question that you have, because they're all very similar at some point. All right, so let's go ahead and get through the first question on this. Now, when I do go through these, I am going to go through these fairly quickly because it is just a review. So it's all things that we have learned before. So I'm just showing you how to answer this question, not necessarily explaining it as in full detail as I might on a regular video. All right, so remember, when we're looking for our slope is equal to our change in y over a change in x. So if we're given a graph, all we have to do is just figure out, well, how many points do we have to go down and over to get to this next point? So we go down 2 to get to where our next point is. So I know that my change in y is equal to -2. And then I'm going to the right 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 spaces. So that means I'm going to the right, so it's positive. So it's +8. And then all I have to do from here is just reduce. Well, both of these are divisible by 2. So this is then going to give me a -1 over 4 as my slope. All right, now for question 800, it says determine if the points form a straight line. If they do, what is their slope? So what we need to do then to determine if these points form a straight line is we need to actually find the slope of our different points. So we need to find the slope of the first and third, or first and second, or first and third, and then lastly our second and third, and see, do they all have the same slope? If at any point we get to one where they don't have the same slope, we can stop there and say no, they do not form a straight line, because we know every single when we have a straight line, our slope is consistent throughout on a line. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and I'm going to label these points, give them names. So I'm going to label this first one A, B, and C. So we're going to find a slope of AB. So we know our slope formula is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And for all of these, I'm just going to label, well, actually, let's go ahead and label A is we have -821. And for B, we have 4, -3. So I'm going to go ahead and label this x1, y1, and x2, y2. So I'll plug them into this formula. So now my slope of AB is equal to -3 minus 21 over top of 4 minus -8. So remember, it is minus in our formula, so we have to maintain that -8, that -4. So this turns to a plus. So this will then give me -24 over top of 12, which is then going to give me a -2 as my slope. So I know my slope of AB is -2. So let me go ahead and highlight that. So then I'm going to move on to the next problem. And the next one is going to be, let's do the slope of BC. We're just going to go right down the line. So the slope of BC. So once again, we're going to go ahead and write these off to the side. So let's say our B is equal to 4, -3, and our C is equal to -2, 8. So we'll say this is x1, y1, x2, y2, and then we'll just go ahead and plug it in. So we have our y2 minus y1, so 8 minus -3 over top of -2 minus 4. So this is going to give me a plus. So it's equal to 11 over -6. This can't reduce, so this is our slope. So right away I can stop and say that our slopes are different, because this is a -2, this is 11 over -6, really close but not exact. So we would say no, they do not form a straight line because the slopes are different. All right, let's move on to the next question. All right, so for this one, it's a little bit tricky now. So we're given 2 points, one -1 and -5z, and they're saying that we now know our slope is -4 over 3. So they're saying, given all this information, figure out what that coordinate has to be, or that missing point of our coordinate. So what we would do is we would still write our points out, 1, -1, and we would have -5z, and we're still going to label them x1, y1, and x2, y2, and we're still going to plug them into our formula of y2 minus y1 over top of x2 minus x1. So then we're going to get z minus -1 over top of -5 minus 1, which is then equal to z plus 1 over top of -6. So we know that this formula is going to generate a slope of negative 4 over 3. So what we can do then is we can set those two equal to each other because we know that this formula will give us this slope. So we can then say, move this down a little bit, we can then say z plus 1 is over negative 6 is equal to, and remember this negative, either give it to the numerator or give it to the denominator. You can't give it to both. So I wrote it up in the numerator and said it's equal to negative 4 over 3. Right, and now this should give us a question that we have already answered this year. So from this point, it's really not anything new. It's just applying something that we've done in the past with something that we're doing now. And what we'll do is we'll cross multiply. So we then get negative 6 times negative 4 is equal to 3 times z plus 1. And now we just need to go ahead and solve for z. So negative 6 times negative 4 is positive 24. We distribute this 3 into both, so it's 3z plus 3. And now we just go ahead and solve by subtracting our 3. So 21 is equal to 3z. And then we'll divide each side by 3 to isolate that z. And that means that z is equal to 7. So if we were to plug 7 back in here to our formula, we would end up getting 8 over negative 6, which is then going to give me that negative 4/3. So we know that we did this correctly. All right, I chose this problem to go over because this is I'm going to rearrange this. So this way you're practicing going over the rearranging questions as well. So we have 4x minus 3y is equal to negative 24. So if we want to, we could just go ahead and find our x, y intercepts, but I'm going to rearrange this so this way we can practice that. So we're going to subtract our 4x because we're going to isolate our y and write this in slope-intercept form. So now we have negative 3y is equal to negative 4x minus 24. Then we're going to divide each side by negative 3 because remember, we need to isolate that y completely. So we get y is equal to, and remember, this creates two different fractions. So now we have this negative 4 over negative 3 x, and then we will have the other fraction of, let's say, negative 24 and negative 3. So we can say plus negative 24 over negative 3. And then from here, we're going to just reduce what we can. Well, the negatives make us a positive, so 4 over 3x, and the negatives make it a positive, so it's going to be plus a positive, so we just need to just write it plus one time, plus 8. Then we're going to identify what our b is. Our b is equal to 8, and we know that's a point of 0, 8, because that's our y-intercept, and our slope is equal to 4 over 3, and that's our change in y over change in x. So the first thing we do is we plot the point 0, 8, so we'll go up to 8. All right, now if I try to count up and over, I'm going to go off my graph. So remember, 4 over 3 is the same as negative 4 over negative 3 because a negative divided by negative is positive, and that's actually what generated our answer here. So that means I'm going to count down. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then to the left 3. 1, 2, 3. So there's my next point. Now I'll count down again. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. And there's my next point. And once I have those 3 points, I will go ahead. You will use a straight edge. I can't use it on this computer very easily, so I'm just going to draw it like this. You will use a straight edge, and that will be your graph. All right, so the next one we have here is writing equations in lines. So remember, y is equal to mx plus b is how you're going to be writing these, and the two letters that we need to solve for are our slope and our y-intercept. Well, when we read this question, they flat out give us this information because it says it passes through the point of 0, negative 3, and whenever our x value is equal to 0, we know that that's giving us our y-intercept. So right away, I can say b is equal to negative 3 without having to do any work. And then it also tells us that we have a slope of 8. You can't see that, so it tells us that we have a slope of 8. So I know that my m is equal to 8. So all I need to do now is just plug those into our equation of y is equal to 8x minus 3. All right, do not write y is equal to 8x plus negative 3. Reduce that, simplify that to get just that minus. All right, so y is equal to 8x minus 3 will be your final answer for this one. All right, it says a line cuts the x-axis at x is equal to 5 and passes through the point of 3, 6. So we know it passes through the point 3, 6, and it says it crosses the x-axis at x is equal to 5. So our x-intercept is 5. And we know when we have our x-intercept, our y is equal to 0, so this actually generates a point of 5, 0. So now we have 2 points that it passes through, 3, 6, and 5, 0. So remember, same thing as the other one. We need to do y is equal to mx plus b, and we need to solve for our slope and our y-intercept. So they don't give us either of these. So that means the first thing we need to do is figure out our slope. And to solve for our slope, we use our slope formula of y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So I'll label this x1, y1, and I'll label this x2. Let me put it underneath. And I'll label this one x2, y2. So now I have that my slope is equal to 0 minus 6 over top of 5 minus 3, which is then going to give me negative 6 over 2, which is then going to give me negative 3. So now I have the equation of y is equal to negative 3 x plus b, and then the last thing I have to solve for is my b. Well, remember, we have x and y values here, so we can pick any one we want and plug it in. I'm going to pick this one here because it has a 0, and 0 is just easier to work with multiplication, adding, subtracting, so I just picked that one. So in this point, my x is equal to 5 and my y is equal to 0. So I can substitute this x in for this x here and this y in for this y here. And I get 0 is equal to negative 3 times 5 plus b. By doing this, I now have my one variable, which then means I can solve for this. So 0 is equal to negative 15 plus b. And I'll add over my 15. And 15 is equal to b. So now that I solve for my slope and my y-intercept, I can plug it into my answer. Y is equal to negative 3x plus 15. And that will be your final answer. All right, so I'm going to go over these first two just to go over, make sure you guys understand the rules for slope or parallel and perpendicular slopes. So we have y is equal to negative 5x plus 14. And it says find the slope of a line that is parallel to this equation. Well, we know that parallel lines have the same slope. So all we have to do then is identify what is our slope for this. So our slope is negative 5. So that means our slope of a line that is parallel to it must also be negative 5. All right, for this one, it says find the slope of a line that is perpendicular to 5x minus 10y is equal to 30. So this one is not in slope-intercept form, so we actually have to rearrange this. So before we talk about perpendicular lines, let's go ahead and rearrange this. So we need to solve it for y is equal to mx plus b. So we'll subtract the 5x first. So then we get negative 10y is equal to negative 5x plus 30. And then we're going to divide each side by negative 10. So now I get y is equal to, remember, it creates two fractions. So we have negative 5 over negative 10x. And then we have plus 30 over negative 10. And now we're going to go ahead and reduce and simplify. So negative 5 over negative 10 is 1/2 positive, so 1/2 x. And then 30 over 10, negative 10 is negative 3. And then we would just say it's minus 3. Do not write plus minus because we can simplify that to just be a minus. So here's this equation rewritten in slope-intercept form so we can easily identify what our slope is. Our slope is 1/2. And remember, perpendicular lines, slopes are negative reciprocals. All right, so the reciprocal means we are going to flip it. So that means that our new slope that is perpendicular to this is going to be equal to 2 over 1. And then whatever the sign was, so it's positive, we just need to make it the opposite, so it's negative. So we would then say our slope is equal to negative 2. And if you want to check your work, you can multiply them together, 1/2 times negative 2, and it must equal negative 1. If it does not equal negative 1, you did not take your negative reciprocal properly. All right, so this will be our answer for this one, that our slope is equal to negative 2. All right, so this is the last question I'm going to go through for this video. So it says write the equation in slope-intercept form. So y is equal to mx plus b of a line that passes through the point negative 3 and 4 and is perpendicular to y is equal to negative 1/2 x minus 4. So if it's perpendicular, we know we need to find this slope, which is going to be negative 1/2. And then the slope that is perpendicular to it is going to be the negative reciprocal. So we flip it, so it gives me 2. And then since it's negative, it's going to be positive. So our slope is 2. So now I already have y is equal to 2x plus b. All right, and remember, when we're dealing with perpendicular and parallel, we don't really care about that y-intercept because we don't use it in anything in part of our new problem. It's just the slopes. It's not the y-intercept. So now what we do is we will say, okay, it passes through this point. So we know that this point will satisfy this equation. So x is equal to negative 3 and y is equal to 4. And we just go ahead and plug them in. 4 is equal to 2 times negative 3, because that's y, and this is x, plus b. Well, 4 is equal to negative 8 plus b. We'll then go ahead and add, I'm sorry, not negative 8. I don't know what I was thinking there. Negative 6 plus b. And then we'll go ahead and add over the 6 to both sides. And we get b is equal to 10. So now that we have that, we just plug this back into our equation for b, and we get y is equal to 2x plus 10. And that will be the final answer. This line, this black line, will be perpendicular to this given equation, and it passes through the point of -3, 4. All right, that is it for this video.